Greetings, my name is Nina. Welcome back to my channel. And in this video, I want to talk about some albums. In this video, I'm going to mention the albums that I keep thinking of them a lot, and I do revisit them on a regular basis. I can go a few years without listening to some of these albums, but eventually I'm going to revisit them. I'm going to listen to them again and again and again, and they still sound cool. So in this video, the order is random, so let's go. And I'm glad to say that I happen to own the physical copies of some of these albums, and I want the rest in my collection. Let's go. So the very first album in this video I'm going to mention, I happen to own a copy, A Night at the Opera by Queen. So this is a very diverse album, and when I originally listened to it, it wasn't my thing, but then I revisited it a few years later, and then I realized that this is the album I really want to revisit again and again. And the Prophet song is my favorite song on this album. So the next album over here is Demons and Wizards by Uriah Heep. I really like this edition of the album. So yeah, there are two discs over here. Here are alternative versions. And the booklet is great, full of interesting information. And the cover is beautiful. But above all, the songs are beautiful. So this is the album that was released in 1972. It hasn't aged a day. Well, all albums in this video, they haven't aged a day, even though a lot of them were made decades ago. But whatever, so this album is wonderful, full of magic. Kinda evident in the title and in the cover. So the third album in this list would be Never Forever by Kate Bush. So I went to the record store that had a lot of Kate Bush albums, but unfortunately it did not have this one, Never Forever. Out of all Kate Bush albums, this is the one that I listen to the most. This is the album that has the infamous Army Dreamers song. Yeah, the album has a lot of great songs like All We Ever Look For, Violin, Egypt, Delius, obviously Army Dreamers, and also Babushka. It is pretty funny to me to hear her say Babushka, because I'm a native Russian speaker, and Babushka in Russian is pronounced Babushka, and it stands for grandmother. Pretty cool album. I wish I had it in my collection. The next album is Peace of Mind by Iron Maiden. I didn't appreciate this album enough. I used to think Somewhere in Time was my favorite, and I have the copy of that album. Yeah, it's a pretty cool album. However, there's something more down to earth about Peace of Mind, more direct. Somewhere in Time, it's a bit more complex, and this Peace of Mind is more straightforward. Yeah, definitely the album I want to listen to again. The next album over here is Ghost of a Rose by Blackmore's Night. Well, I haven't listened to this album in years, but this year I revisited the album, and it was still pretty solid. And this one has probably my two most favorite Blackmore's Night songs, All for One and Lorelei. So the next would be Peter Gabriel's third album, Melt. Now, I'm not a Peter Gabriel fan, even though I have his compilation album, Shaking the Tree, 16 Greats. That album has my favorite song, Games Without Frontiers, and I think that the very first song on the album, Intruder, is pretty good. The intro is very majestic. Yeah, even though I'm not a fan of this guy, this album is the one that I want to revisit. Don't know why, there was something charming about this album. Unfortunately, I did not appreciate his other albums. So the next album is a Russian rock album. I absolutely love Звезда по имени Солнце by Kino. Звезда по имени Солнце stands for a star called Sun. I have a video where I talk about Kino, feel free to check it out. So I didn't listen to Kino albums back in the day, I mostly listened to songs, but in 2025 I rediscovered the band. And when I did, Звезда по имени Солнце was the first album that I checked out, and wow, that album was mind-blowing. That album has titular Звезда по имени Солнце and the infamous Пачка сигарет, Pack of Cigarettes, the very first song that I heard. There's something about not only this album, but in general that makes you think of warm summer. And the guitar solos are incredible. Yeah, out of all Kino albums that I heard, this one is my favorite. The next one is Pain Remains by Lorna Shore. I never thought I would like Lorna Shore. I'm out of my Lorna Shore era right now. However, I appreciated the And I Return to Nothingness EP, and I appreciated Pain Remains. The last time I listened to this album was spring 2025, and I want to listen to this album again. I do need to admit that I discovered Lorna Shore when I was under a lot of stress, and I listened to this album when I was stressed. Now that I'm more relaxed, I guess that's the reason I'm out of the Lorna Shore era, but I would like to revisit Pain Remains album again. And this is the rare case where I would rather listen to full album from start to finish rather than to separate songs, even though the one song I'd like to listen to on a regular basis is the first one, Welcome Back or Sleeping Dreamer, because there is one breakdown I really like. Yeah, it's weird that a deathcore album ended up here, but my music taste is a kind of diverse, as you can see. Okay, the next album is pretty fun to listen to. It's fast and really fun, and it's Somewhere Far Beyond by Blind Guardian. And I need to point out one thing, that I mean the original 1992 version. Well, I'm mentioning this because they re-recorded the album released a few years ago. Haven't listened to it from start to finish because I like the original album, but I think that the Quest for 10 alone was better re-recorded. Yeah, that album is very fun, and it's that album that has the infamous The Bard song in the forest, which is ironic because my favorite songs on the album are anything but that one for some reason. The Bard song is iconic, that's undeniable. Okay, the next album is The Machinists of Joy by The Groups. I discovered this band absolutely randomly. Absolutely at random, I discovered one of their songs. I liked it a lot, and then I listened to this album, and I liked it. Pretty solid industrial music. To be honest, when I was listening to The Groups, I was like, Rammstein who? Literally, that's what came to my mind. Okay, I did listen to other The Groups albums and they did not grow on me, but this one, The Machinists of Joy, I would revisit again and again. Next one is Blackmore's Night, again Shadow of the Moon, their debut album. I remember that when I revisited the album back in 2022, after some time of not listening it, I realized that the album is even better than I thought. The next album on this list I haven't listened to in years, but I haven't forgotten about this album, and I'm eventually going to listen to it again. It's Colors in the Dark by Tarja Turunen. Yeah, I tend to forget that it's just Tarja, no last name officially. I remember when this album came out. I did listen to the singles as they came out, and I do remember listening to the album back in 2013. Before she released the album, she had 2 albums and I wasn't a fan of them. Gonna confess that at the time I was not a huge fan of her solo work, but this one I appreciated because it's pretty dark and heavy and kinda colorful. However, the songs that I liked the most on that album are the heaviest ones. On the album there are heavy songs, there are a bit fast songs, and then there are more relaxed and more chill songs, and I prefer the former. The next album on my list is Richie Blackmore's Rainbow. I really wanted to get that album, but they bought the only copy they had before I could buy it myself, so I bought Long Live Rock and Roll instead. but in another store. One of the things I really like about that album is its cover. The cover is absolutely incredible. Yeah, I really want that album in my collection, and my favorite song on the album is Self-Portrait. And unfortunately, that song is geo-blocked on Spotify for me. Why? So the album is available on Spotify, but 2 songs are blocked. I don't know why. The next album on my list is Live Through This by Hole. I've heard of Hole before, but I haven't listened to them until this year, and I listened to all 4 of their albums, and out of 4 of them I liked Live Through This the most. The cover of the album reminds me of Carrie by Stephen King. And the tone of the album does match the book, because there's lots of rage in both the music and the cover. And my favorite song on the album is Miss World. Yeah, that album is absolutely incredible. I really want it in my collection. I listened to it a few times already. I'm gonna listen to it again. The next album over here I added to my notes over here just now as I was filming this video, because I remembered about it when I was filming, and I listened to it a few times, and I think it's a very chill and relaxing album. I liked it, and it's Charm by Clairo. Now it's April, and in the last few days I have been listening to a lot of Clairo, and also Layway too. Out of all of her albums, I appreciated Charm the most. This is her 3rd album. Yeah, 3rd time the charm, like they say. Yeah, the album is charming, it's relaxing, it's very chill. But I need to point out that I appreciated this album more on a revisit rather than the first time, because when I listened to this album the first time, I thought that it was more like vibes. Yeah, the vibe rather than melody. But when I listened to it again, I realized that the music was much deeper than that. And finally, the last album in this video, and I deliberately saved this album for the last. I have a deep connection to this album. This is basically my comfort album, and that's At the Edge of Time by Blind Guardian. And this was my first album by this band, and I can finally say that it's my favorite of theirs. And like I said, this is a comfort album of mine, because I feel joy listening to it, and in the last few days I was like, yeah, I need to listen to this album again and again. In the past I used to overlook the 2 epics on this album, Sacred Worlds and The Wheel of Time, and now I have them on repeat a lot. One of them, or probably both, are going to be in my top 5 songs on Spotify Wrapped this year, I think. But yeah, I love this album. This is my comfort album. I love it very much. Not only the album is incredible, but also the source material that inspired the album. 6 books influenced the lyrics on this album, and I read out of them 5. I have yet to read the 6th one. It's a comfort album because I have a strong epic side, and this album speaks to said epic side. Probably their most epic album, other than the Legacy of the Darklands. I nearly mispronounced the word legacy. I nearly said legacy. Oh no. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you next time. Goodbye.